It is that time again. Time for another game of Shelve It or Shove It, that completely superficial way to pick books for your TBR based solely on their covers. I am your host, Daisy Ex Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. What I'm going to be doing is going through the Goodreads new releases for August to pick at least one book for my TBR based solely on their covers. I'll be looking at young adult, science fiction, and fantasy. So let's get started. Starting in young adult, the first book is The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I recognize this cover because it is the same style as other issues in this series. I believe it's a series. And I appreciate that it's branded in such a way that I can recognize it just on this cover because it has a very distinctive font. And it's not my favorite type of cover, but of this type of cover, I appreciate it. And I do think it's lovely with the crown and the lantern, and there's pendant, there's stopwatch, all sorts of things, and this black, I don't know what it is, sort of arabesque something with green leaves around it. I do appreciate the cover, and I think it's very attractive actually for this type of cover, but I'm not going to jump into a series this late in the game, so I'm going to go ahead and shove it. Next up is House of Marion by J.L. And I think it's similar to the Hawthorne cover, but not as well executed. There's a sword, there's some flowers. I assume it's young adult fantasy, but it looks very generic to me, so I'm going to have to shove it. Next up is Never a Hero by Vanessa Len, author of Only a Monster. The fate of every future rests in the hands of a monster, and there's this attractive girl on the cover. Doesn't look like a monster to me, but it's not calling to me. The colors are kind of muted. I don't know about this light turquoise type color scheme. It looks a little dull, and the artwork isn't that great. It looks a little cartoony. So I'm going to have to shove it. Next up is Together We Rot by Skyla Arndt. Secrets are stronger than blood. The morgue wood is full of both. Secrets and blood. I like this cover. I like this illustration. There's this couple embracing, but at least he looks like he's hollow because you can see the skeleton inside. Looks like there's moss around him and there's these vines creeping up. And I do like horror, and I don't know why I find more horror in young adult than the other categories. Like I said a million times, I wish Goodreads had their own horror category. But sure, I'm going to go ahead and shelve it. And finally, in young adult, we have Foxglove by Adeline Grace. And it says exclusive edition, Barnes & Noble. Okay, it's a woman, and it looks like there's these little trumpet pink flowers all around her. It looks generic young adult fantasy to me. So, I'm going to have to shove it. Now we move on to science fiction. And first up is My Name is Iris by Brando Skyhorse, author of the Penn Hemingway Award winner, The Madonnas of Echo Park. I don't know this author or that book. The cover, artistically, I get it. I get why this cover could work for some people. I like the hands reaching for each other, and there's petals around it. There's a, I want to say tattoo, but there's a rose on the wrist. I don't know. I'm not getting anything of what this book could be about. I know it's in science fiction. No clue. I'm going to have to shove it. Next up is Bridge by Lauren Bukes. It's colorful. I appreciate it's colorful. It looks like some type of color blocking type thing going on behind the fonts. And this picture of, it looks like a couple of women superimposed on each other in different color blocks. Not drawing me in. It's not a cover that's making me ask the right questions, like what the story is about, etc. It's making me ask, why did they make the choices for this cover art? So I'm going to have to shove it. Next up is The Great Transition by Nick Fuller-Guggins. I don't like this cover. There's this big sort of skyscape, and then there's sort of this city skyline way at the bottom, and it looks like there's these little ships or boats floating in a harbor, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I don't like this cover. I'm going to have to shove it. Next up is Time's Mouth by Eden Lapuki. Are they trying to punk me? This cover is telling me nothing. Okay, there's a rainbow. Maybe it's LGBT. I don't know. I think there's a forest behind it. Know nothing about this book. By the title, Time's Mouth, something about time travel, maybe. I don't know. Not enough for me. I'm going to have to shove it. And finally, in science fiction, The Museum of Human History by Rebecca Bergman. I like the title. Sometimes the title's enough to make me go for it. I don't know. I don't know what to say about this cover. There's this woman and there's this cloud over her face. What could this be about? I'm guessing far future, the Museum of Human History. Have humans like died off and maybe robots rule and they have a museum of human history? I don't know. This cover, I like the art. This is weird. I like the artwork. I like the title, but it's just, this is a type of situation that I would pick it up and read the blurb, but just by the cover, I'm not getting enough about what this could be about. So sadly, I'm going to have to shove it. Okay, I didn't shelve any science fiction this week, so let's move on to fantasy. First up is He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan. It looks like Asian-style ships. It's not for me. I'm not loving this cover. The artwork's kind of messy and the colors are kind of blah. So I'm going to have to shove it. Next up is Thornheads by T. Kingfisher. I've just been reading a lot of T. Kingfisher lately. Well, I've read 3 books by T. Kingfisher this year, and I love this writer. So already this book is, getting up there just by the name of the author. Thornhead, not all curses should be broken. I'm assuming it's a Sleeping Beauty retelling. I kind of wish it wasn't a fairy tale retelling, but that's just a guess. But all that said, the cover itself is kind of intriguing because it's very muted. The illustration of these thorns with a castle in the background look almost blurry. Well, not blurry, but faded. except for this one thorn with this drop of blood, which is making it pop. And half of this is because of the author, but I'm going to go ahead and shelve it. Next up is The Water Outlaws by S.L. Huang. This could have been like the first fantasy book. If the covers were the same, I wouldn't have questioned which cover went with which. There's the Asian looking, I want to say samurai on a horse. I actually like this artwork, and I like these little fairy samurai floating around them. But I'm not really getting drawn into the cover that I want to pick it up just to read it based on the cover. So I'm gonna have to shove it. Next up is Forged by Blood by, oh dear, Ehigbor Okusun. And I apologize for mispronouncing this name. There is a warrior, a person of color with a sword. Oh, and it says book 1 of the Tainted Blood duology. So if you pick this up, you know you're going to be waiting a year for the sequel to come out. The cover itself, I don't mind it. I kind of like the artwork, but God, I wish the colors were more saturated and vibrant. And I don't want to get into book 1 of a duology without both of them being out. So I'm going to have to shove it. And finally, in fantasy, Medusa's Sisters by Lauren J.A. Bear. Even monsters have families. I feel like I've been seeing a lot of these Medusa retellings. I was going to say 2, but I guess there's 3 Medusas on the cover. A red one, a yellow one, and then sort of behind them, this grayish one. I don't know. I guess maybe it's about the Gorgons. But, yeah, I just don't want to do a Medusa retelling. Yet another one. I'm going to have to shove it. Okay, this should be simple because I only shelved 2 books. I shelved Together We Rot, the young adult horror by Skyla Arndt. I'm assuming it's a horror. And the fantasy Thorn Hedge by T. Kingfisher, which I assume is a fairy tale retelling. I'm going with T. Kingfisher. I'm sorry. I really have gotten to love this author, want to read more by them. And the cover is good enough. The cover pops because of that red drop of blood. So, and I think there's something reflected in the blood, but my eyesight's not good enough to make that out. If there is something in there, let me know in the comments. Anyway, let's go ahead and read the blurb for Thorn Hedge by T. Kingfisher. Thorn Hedge is the tale of a kind-hearted toad-shaped heroine, a gentle knight, and a mission gone completely sideways. There's a princess trapped in a tower. This isn't her story. Meet Toadling. On the day of her birth, she was stolen from her family by the fairies, but she grew up safe and loved in the warm waters of fairyland. Once an adult, though, the Fae ask a favor of Toadling. Return to the human world and offer a blessing of protection to a newborn child. Simple, right? But nothing with fairies is ever simple. Centuries later, a knight approaches a towering wall of brambles where the thorns are as thick as your arm and as sharp as swords. He's heard there's a curse here that needs breaking, but it's a curse Toadling will do anything to uphold. Okay, this is why I love T. Kingfisher. They're always subverting the fairy tale, because I just read Nettle and Bones, which is a Hugo-nominated novel. Maybe it'll win in October, fingers crossed. But it's not about a princess trapped in a tower. This isn't her story. It's about this toad girl who grew up in fairyland and cast a blessing that turned into a curse. The tower thing reminded me of Rapunzel, but of course the thorns is more Sleeping Beauty. But who knows how T. Kingfisher has twisted these myths up. And the writing, if you haven't read T. Kingfisher before, is always very humorous. Not over the top parodies, but all the characters have this warmth and there's this humor running through it. The style, which I mean the voice of the writing, is just really special in every book I've read of Kingfisher, starting with The Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. So very excited about this one, but I want to know what book or books you would have picked based solely on their covers. Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.